What's up everyone? In today's video, we are going to be talking about gradient maps, some ways that you can create and apply them to images in Photoshop, specifically to give your graphics a more worn in, vintage type feel. Of course, there's going to be some tips and tricks along the way. Also, where am I? Let's go. What's up everyone? So first of all, thank you so much to all the new subscribers that are here. Thank you to everyone who's been subscribed. It means so much that you watch these videos, so thank you. If you've been with the channel for a while or even just checked out a few videos, it probably looks a little bit different over here. I did recently relocate to Minneapolis. I've been here a few weeks now. I'm super hyped on it. I guess that also answers the question that I get all the time, which is, Fuller, are you in Los Angeles? I'm not in LA. I don't know why everyone seems to think that. Maybe it's because I don't have like the thick Fargo Midwestern accent.
Okay, are you sure?
Anyways, in today's video, I'm going to introduce you to the world of gradient maps in Photoshop. So by now I've shown you multiple ways of colorizing and coloring up photos, everything from the more paintbrushy method, using different blending modes, to selective color, which can be a more like automated process that you apply to the entirety of a photo. This is sort of like both of those things combined, which is cool. It's gonna allow for a ton of control from the lowlights to the highlights. It can also be a more automated process because you can save out presets if you want to. But yeah, I've been using this a ton lately. I've been doing a lot of vintage work. Works great for like skin tones, but you can also use it for like different elements inside of a graphic, and I'm gonna show you that today. So basically we're going to work backwards. You know how we do it on this channel. I'll show you the finished product before and after, and then I'll show you the reference inspiration photo right alongside it. We'll work backwards and I'll show you every step of the way. So I think without further ado, let's just jump into my computer and see what's going on. Okay, so we are inside Photoshop. On the left, we've got an artboard with the photo we're gonna be using, the original full color photo. On the right, we've got an artboard with the inspiration graphic that we're gonna sort of try to mimic. So I'm gonna go over artboards really quickly because I don't think I've really mentioned that on this channel in any of my tutorials. It's very useful if you're doing this sort of work where you're trying to like capture the vibe of like another graphic, like vintage or whatever the case may be. To do that, basically just go up to I almost said go up to Fuller, Jesus. Go up to File, New, and I always create canvases at 15 inches wide by 25 inches in height, 300 pixel per inch resolution, color mode RGB, 8-bit, and you just want to select artboards if that's what you want to use. Without it, it'll just be a regular ass document. For this tutorial, we're going to be using artboard. So click that, hit create, and that'll give you one artboard. I wish it was more like Illustrator where you could just select multiple artboards from the beginning. If there's a way to do that, someone should let me know, because this is the only way I know. But basically go to the move tool, and the second option down is artboard tool. It's at the very top over here of your tools panel on the left. And then you just click off of your canvas and you can drag over to 15 inches. The guides are gonna show on the top and bottom, so you know where 25 inches is in this case. And then I'll just go to like around 15 inches. Like, sure, that's very close, right? And that'll give you a second artboard, and then you can just go over here at the bottom here, solid color. And so now you've got two black artboards to use, okay? So now we're back with the example graphic and the photo we're gonna be using for this tutorial. Here's before, here is after with all the effects applied. As you can see, looks pretty vintage to me. I mean, there's the half-toning textures throughout. I applied the gradient maps to the hair, to the skin tones, added even a little texture over the top for good measure. And so yeah, I'm gonna be basically working backwards from here and showing you exactly how we got to this place. So first things first, let's get rid of everything on our canvas here. Let's go to Google. I was just searching Rodman 90s sunglasses. I was hoping to find a photo with the dope ass fucking Oakleys. Couldn't find a good one. Settled for this. It's all good. This was the best option I could find that was like from the shoulders up, super high resolution, all that good stuff. We're gonna just right click on this photo, copy image, back to Photoshop, Command V to paste it in, Control V if you're on PC, of course. We've got the move tool selected at the top of our tools panel with show control or show transform controls checked as well. And that's going to give us the highlighted box that we can just drag the corner of to size the photo up, right? Nothing too complicated. We're just gonna try to get it to a place where his head's like the similar size to what we see on the right here. That's pretty good. Right, let's just go with that. All right, so what would the next step be? We have to get rid of the background. We don't want this like maroon fucking square behind him. So over here, you see the properties window. To get to that, you just go up to window and properties. And the reason we have this pulled up is because you'll see quick actions right here. It'll probably look like this initially. Click the little arrow to the left of the quick actions text, and that'll drop down remove background and select subject. I always just use remove background. I've found that works best for me. So we can go ahead and click that, and that's going to get rid of pretty much everything. You can see there's a little bit here we need to touch up and over here as well. To do that, you can just go to your paintbrush here, your brush tool, and have your foreground set to white and your background to black or vice versa. But basically, if you paint in with white, it's going to bring back more of that original image. Just make sure you've got your mask layer highlighted over here. But let's bring in a little bit more of this earring. It looks like it got cut off. And then we can get rid of some stuff as well that's left over. And so we'll change the foreground to black to do that. And then just keep painting. So you can just go back and forth. I think there is a way to switch really quickly between foreground and background. I can't remember what it is right now. It takes an extra half a second, so it's not a huge deal to me. But if anyone knows that really quick, just leave it in the comments so anyone else can see it if they're interested. But yeah, basically I'm just shaping this earring a little bit better. I don't even know how much of that is going to be showing, but you might as well just take care of these small details now. Why not? We're here. We're alive. Let's fucking take care of it. Bring back the ear a little bit. The edges, as you can see, look like a little bit like sketchy and like harsh. We can fix that. Click the little black and white silhouette on your mask over here on the right side in your layers panel. In your layers panel, you'll see layer mask thumbnail. Click that, and then that's going to change the properties to this layer mask. And then you can just bump up feather. Like I'll show you the extreme of what it does. It basically just like softens the entirety of the outside of your mask. For easy math, we can probably just do like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 probably. Let's just try 7. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Nice soft, edge here, right? So that looks pretty good. From here, I personally like to duplicate the masking layer, and then I'll just convert it to a smart object. Okay, so we've got our smart object here. Let's just rename it Rodman Cutout. Okay, and so from here, I'm gonna just jump right to messing with the brightness and contrast. We're gonna end up probably doing a gradient to sort of like gradually fade the bottom of the photo, similar to what they did on this right side. But first, let's just do the brightness and contrast thing to see how much of that we really need. So I'll go up to Image, Adjustments, Brightness, Contrast, check Use Legacy. We'll bring down the brightness, bring up the contrast, just eyeballing it here. And so as you can see, like, we are gonna need a gradient on the bottom. You could also use the eraser tool, but the gradient tool is gonna be less destructive. But we are gonna need it right there because there's like a hard edge. But basically I'm just like eyeballing it again, just sort of like, to make sure there's still like plenty of detail in the photo, just bumping up the contrast a bit. So that looks pretty good. Now let's add that gradient on the bottom, that little fade. Set the foreground over here to black, and then just double click this layer here, the Rodman cutout layer. Click gradient overlay. Very important that you pay attention here. You don't want the first option selected here in our gradient box. If you click that, you'll see, excuse me, if you click the little arrow, I'm sorry. If you click the little arrow here, the drop down, that gives you all the like sort of presets that you could use, you know, if you wanted to. For this, we just want the second option, which is foreground to transparent. You don't want this first option because that's going to cover the whole photo. Select the second one. I get this, I still to this day, no matter how many times I go over this, I get that DM so often, or that YouTube comment like, my photo is covered up when I use gradients. Like, use the second option. All right. Scale, I'll go all the way down to 10% because that's going to give us just the like little fade at the bottom that's similar to this. It's not gonna like, if we bump the scale up, it's going to fade more of it, but scale at 10%. I'm just moving it over here with the mouse. And we want a little bit of like the shirt showing, I think. So let's just go like, maybe like right there, okay? All right, so we're looking good. We've got the floating head situation over here. We can start adding the gradient map now. And I don't want this to get super technical. I hope that it doesn't, but just follow along here, right? So we've got our Rodman cutout layer. At the bottom here, you see the little half black, half white circle, create new fill or adjustment layer. Gradient map is at the very bottom, second to last. Click that, and right away, I'll right click on it and I'll do create clipping mask. And so now it's only being applied to the cutout photo. If for whatever reason we wanted to add some shit in the background, let's say we want to add some red fucking, I don't know, some squiggles. I don't know what you guys are up to. Whatever you want to add, right? That's going to allow us to use the background without it being affected by the gradient map, okay? Because the gradient map's only being applied to this cutout photo. So if we remove it, release clipping mask, we go back, we try to like draw some shit, it's gonna look weird, right? So right click on the gradient map, create clipping mask, right? We cool? Okay. So from here, you can see in the properties window that there's a gradient, and basically you click that and then you can start messing around with what colors you wanna use, right? So the far right, these are called color stops. The little swatches on the bottom and top. The far left are the lowlights. So if you're using a black background, you just more than likely make that black, right? The far left, that's gonna be your highlights. So in this case, you know, we'll probably want it like an off-white sort of color, you know, because it's not like pure white, it's like kind of that faded white. So let's just go with, you know, this, maybe like almost like blue tinted even. Okay, and so you leave it like that. You're basically just on a basic gradient, one color to another color. Everything in between here is where the cool shit happens. So like, if you click right here, and you can see the location percentage down here, you can get nerdy with it if you want and make that like 20 and the next one 40 and 60 and whatever. But you're gonna see in a second that I just like to mess with it and eyeball it, so it doesn't really matter. But click the color stop that you just added, and then you can pick out different values to use. So These are gonna be the lowlights in the middle, the midtones, and then highlights to the right. And so we're gonna wanna look at this reference image and pick out, you know, in this case, it's gonna be like a dark brown sort of color. I'm gonna lean more towards like the orangish yellow spectrum, right? And so basically to the left, we're getting more desaturated. To the right, it's more saturated. I'm gonna try to keep it somewhere in the middle. And so let's go like just eyeballing it. If you wanted to use the color picker, the eyedropper, beforehand and like pick out colors from this inspiration graphic, you could totally do that. That's not what I'm gonna do, but so that looks cool to me. From here, if you click the color stop that you just added, or any of them for that matter, but click this color stop and then just move to the right or left, it's gonna add that same color. So that's kind of handy because it'll allow you to just gradually move from one color to the next and like keep the same, what's the word? The same tones, I guess, the same, yeah, I don't know. You'll see. Like, it looks very natural is what I'm trying to say. I'm having a brain fart, sorry, but like, I very rarely will use more than maybe 5 colors in my gradient maps when it comes to like the vintage stuff. I feel like when you get into like 8, 10 like colors, it just sort of defeats the purpose, because then you might as well just be using like a full color photo that you've just like messed with the hue and saturation. But that looks decent there. And then I'm gonna add one more of almost like a yellowish sort of color. Actually, yeah, more like a light orange, I guess, but. Okay, so that's decent. Now from here, you can sort of mess with the locations of these color stops and just see like what looks good. Like if you wanted to go like really low contrast, you could do that by bumping over like this first color stop after the black one. The more you move it to the right, basically the more like contrast you're going to see. I kind of like it a little more low contrast because that's what's happening in this example design. The white, like off-white highlight, I always, more often than not at least, just leave it all the way to the right because I want like a nice gradual fade to that color. This is looking pretty good. Okay, a little bit more contrast. The contrast is going to change later anyways, but, and maybe this stuff will change too, but yeah, okay. This is looking pretty good. Okay, let's stop there. That feels pretty decent. From here, we are going to use another gradient map and change his hair color. We can change it to whatever color we want. To do that, I'm just going to zoom in. I'm going to highlight the Rodman cutout graphic. And we're going to go over to our lasso tool, third option at the top of our tools panel. And then I'm just going to like manually sort of like eyeball where his hair is. It doesn't need to be, I mean, you should try to make it as precise as possible, but like, if you look at the, Jesus, what happened there? You can make it as precise as you want if you want to zoom in and really get technical with it. When you look at like the vintage like graphics though, they sometimes just look a little shitty, like, and so I don't know, I would prefer to live in that world than like try to get super nerdy and technical and like make it perfect, because that's like part of the appeal of like those old ass t-shirts, you know. Sort of this lasso situation going over here. Again, with the Rodman cutout layer highlighted, just hit Command J, and that's going to pop that hair off dude's head, you can click off the gradient overlay because we're not going to need that. And then move the hair layer above our original gradient map, and then duplicate the gradient map. Move this new gradient map over the hair, right click, create clipping mask, back down to our OG gradient map again, right click, create clipping mask. So now we have two different gradient maps going, two different clipping masks. The top one's only affecting the hair, the bottom one is affecting the original photo, right? So now when we click this new gradient map, we can go in, if we want to keep some of the same colors from our original gradient map, that's not a bad idea because that's going to allow for a little bit of cohesiveness between the different areas that are being colored. But let's focus on the low light, sort of mid-tone colors here. I'm gonna start off with the low light that's closest to the black here and change it to like a dark green, right? Dark green, again, just like, we're just gonna mess around and see like what starts to look good. Sure. This mid-tone color, let's use our original dark green down here, that little trick, right? Clicking that and then clicking the middle and just bumping it up. So it's more of a, mid-tone. And then, like I said, like the original, sort of like tan color we use, like it doesn't look terrible. Like it definitely looks cohesive because you see that color, in his face and then you see it in the hair. Like I don't hate it. I kind of want it to be a little bit more yellow. So that's what I'm gonna do. Because that's kind of what's going on in the original. You can see it just like barely, it's just like a little bit more yellow tinted. But yeah, and then, if you want to mess with it, bring in more of that yellow, you can just move it to the left. I want it just to be a little bit yellow, mostly just like these two sort of green colors. But yeah, click OK. We've got some green hair now on Dennis. If you look at this OG graphic, you can see just a faint line around it sort of separating these two sections. You can do that with your graphic. Like you just click the cutout hair, or double click it rather, and just add a stroke. Like outside, change it to black, bring down the stroke size a bit so it's just like barely there, maybe like 4 or 5. Yeah, I've got it on 5 now. Bring the opacity down. And this is like nerdy shit. Like this is just like the details that, you probably just you'll know about, but it adds to it. Like any small little detail like this is always good. It does nothing but help like the overall graphic, right? So we're looking good. We've got the more vintage looking skin tones. We've got the green hair. You could take it as many steps further from here as you want. If you wanted to use again the polygonal, or not the lasso, standard ass lasso tool. Cut out his sunglasses, cut out, some of the jewelry, the shirt, like anything goes. And then just remember to add the new gradient maps, new clipping masks, and you could go all day on that. We're just gonna leave it at this for now, just for the sake of not making this tutorial super long, like I mentioned earlier. But from here, let's add the vintage sort of like halftone texture over the top, right? So to do that, I'm going to grab everything that's active right now, every layer that's active. So we've got this layer 3, which is actually nothing. I don't know. Oh yeah, that was for our red squiggles from earlier. So we're just gonna grab the Rodman cutout, everything above it, hold down Shift so that it's all selected. Command J is going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to right click with everything still highlighted and go to merge layers. And so now basically we've got this whole thing that we've created on its own layer, like duplicated. So there's essentially 2 of them. This is going to be our halftone layer. So right away I'm going to right click and go convert to smart object, because we're going to start messing around with this and may need to go back. Let's rename it Halftones. Okay. From here, I'm going to hit Command U to bring up the hue and saturation box. And I'm going to bring the saturation down to -100. And I'm going to change the foreground color to black, the background color to white. Okay. Go up to Filter at the top and Filter Gallery. Let's zoom out here. We're gonna be working with Sketch Halftone Pattern, okay? Size, I'm gonna leave relatively low because if you look at the OG graphic, it's like the halftones are pretty small, so 3 is actually great. Contrast also pretty low. You know, you can mess with it if you want, but you're gonna lose more detail basically the higher the contrast is. 12 was great. Pattern type, leave it with dot. That's just like traditional halftoning. Side note, if anyone saw one of my recent Outcast designs that I posted to Instagram, like the green and yellow looking one, I used pattern type line on that to give it that more like a Xeroxed look. So if that's what you want to do, that's cool. That's just a side note because I did get actually a few DMs like asking how I did that. So that's for you. So pattern type dot. From here, we're gonna add a couple more effects that'll actually just enhance this halftoning process, make it a little more detailed. Click the little bottom plus sign here, new effect layer, and then go down to the second layer and go to, instead of sketch, go to texture, grain, okay? And then once you've got that, change the grain type to enlarged. Intensity, let's just do 20, and contrast 40, just for like easy math. Again, those are two values that you can mess around with as much or as little as you want to. We're gonna add another grain effect. So again, click the bottom here, new effect layer, move that new grain layer to the bottom, and then change the grain type to clumped. Same values for intensity and contrast. We're gonna see how it looks when it gets done processing here, but yeah, that's pretty good. But basically, as you can see, that just adds in like more detail. I'll remove them quick so you can see. It just gives it a little bit more of like, just a little extra bump in like contrast, brings in a little bit more detail. I don't know, I find it useful. I use it, I'm actually gonna do a whole other video where I use this more for like gradients and like vintage looking graphics that are more like the 80s rock vibe, whatever. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Click OK. This is our halftones layer. Change the blending mode up here to darker color. Like that's what I like using the most. You can try multiply if you want. To me, it bumps up the contrast too much versus darker color. So that's what I like using on this vintage looking shit. Okay, so we've got our halftones going. If you want, you know, you can zoom in here and like, I don't know, if you wanted, you could like bring down the opacity of those halftones if you wanted. Again, it's all up to you. I just like it to be 100% opacity. From here, we are going to put a little texture over the top for good measure. Nothing too heavy. You can get as heavy as you want with it. But so from here, we're gonna go down to our bottom layer, hold down Shift, click the top layer, and then just hit Command G, and that's gonna group everything together. And then we're going to click Add Layer Mask. And now we can bring in some textures that we wanna use and apply them. So now I've got the master bundle from FULLERMOE.com pulled up, a little plug there. That has everything from the website, so we're gonna use the vintage textures. I really wanna use something that's like pretty tightly packed. I know that this vintage medium denim is pretty good for that, and that's what I used when I was doing this the first time, so we're gonna use that here. We can go ahead and just double click that. Open it up in Photoshop. Command A is going to select the entire canvas. Command C is going to copy it, and then back over into our grouped layers here. And now we're gonna hold down the Option key, click the mask thumbnail here, this white box, and then hit Command V, and that's going to paste in that texture, okay? And now the textures that I've made are all the size of the canvas that I use. I do that obviously on purpose so that when I paste it in, it's perfect and it just takes up the entire canvas. That's what I found works best. Okay, so now we're going to jump out of the layer mask, hold down the Option key, click the little thumbnail here for our layer mask, and now we're outside of it, okay? And so now, if we want to change how much of the texture there is, like how contrast it is, right now it's pretty heavy, and so it looks like super worn, which like doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look really like the example, which just has like a little bit of crackling going on there. I'm gonna hit Command A with this layer mask selected right over here. So see, I've got that selected. And then I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, Brightness, and Contrast. And that's going to allow us to change that texture layer, okay? So I'm gonna bump up the brightness quite a bit, and that's going to reduce sort of the intensity of the texture. And we just want just a little bit of those cracks, right? Just a little bit of distressing going on. Bring down the contrast a bit more. Maybe bring down the brightness a little. But yeah, that's pretty good there, okay? So that's pretty much it. I mean, from here, if you want to keep messing around with colors, you decide like, yo, his skin is looking a little bit too yellow, just go down to your gradient map here, change the colors out. You decide you want to make, you know, Dennis's hair red, change these colors, like change the color, the green to red. Like, it's that simple. And like maybe this yellow could be like, I mean, it doesn't look bad at yellow, but maybe that could be, yeah, maybe you want that as a light pink or something. But you just need to make sure that you set up all this stuff in the right way so that you don't you're not like destructive along the way. Like, that's the key, so that you can experiment, you can change your mind, you can go back, make sure you're saving your files along the way. So that is it for today's video. Hopefully you learned something and you can apply it to whatever, you know, copyright free, stock, original photos that you might have and create some unique graphics. That is the goal of this channel. It's not to go out and make Dennis Rodman t-shirts and sell them and profit off other people's names. That's not what we're about on this channel. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do that now and hit the notification bell so you know whenever I drop a new video. I remember when I had 9 subscribers, I now have over 31,000. It's amazing to me. Like, I don't even have the words. Yeah, I'm blown away by that fact. I have each and every one of you to thank, so thank you. Leave a comment below if you have any questions on this video or if there's anything you want to see in future videos. Hit me up on Instagram, it's @fuller.moe. I'm always happy to answer any questions you might have, give critiques on designs, or whatever it is you need. I'll hit you back as soon as possible. Appreciate every single one of you, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.